This isn't the most appropriate thing, so that's why I have the earmuffs on the children. East Texas, near Louisiana, is pure Dixie. Unlike the rest of Texas, it is moist and densely forested. It is poor, it is black, and peckerwood white, isolated and suspicious, and has been for a long time. I think that pretty much sums up the Dixie portion of Texas. Moving on to Mesoamerica. Agriculture. For the southern tip, sugarcane. They got everything in Texas, don't they? Even sugarcane. Southern tip, sugarcane. Map from the modules. Valuable map. Also, Hispanic population, especially near the border. And what does that mean for the religion of Mesoamerica? Catholic map, also from the modules. Southern portion, high concentration. You can thank the Spanish for that. Hernan Cortez, bringing in the Catholic religion from Spain, converting the natives, Native Americans. Syncretism, Tex-Mex food. You got the steak, the Texas beef, and then the Mexican portion, you got the beans, the peppers, Tex-Mex. Syncretism. My sister moved to Houston about 5 years ago, and she didn't like the Tex-Mex food. They don't have chips and salsa on the table. It must be a Midwestern thing. Yeah, no chips and salsa. It was a deal breaker for her. The religion, you've got the Spanish, Mexican Catholics, as we discussed earlier. Then the settler religions, I'd call Methodist, Baptist. So you almost get a blend, a syncretism of the religions, as people might refer themselves as Methodist Catholic or Baptist Catholic. West Texas, you have cattle. Farther north you go, cotton, wheat. Very Anglo is what the Nine Nations book tells us. And that's Texas. Crop. Woo! Don't mess with Texas. When you live in Acton, they give you a complimentary lariat. Illinois is next. Illinois. Sweet home Chicago. Chi-Town, the Windy City. We're on the Foundry section of Illinois. Foundry. The Nine Nations book tells us the first steel railroad track made in 1865 was at the North Chicago Rolling Mill. Fun fact. Chicago School of Architecture. Steel skyscrapers from the 1880s, 1890s. Pretty much changed everything in terms of architecture, how buildings were made. This is Chicago Foundry. Why was it important? Well, it's got a lot of access on the Lake Michigan. They can ship it, they can bring in the iron ore. And that brings me on to the sectors. Thought this would be fun. You've got the primary sector, the mining of the ore, primary. Then you've got the converting of that iron ore into pig iron and then to steel, secondary. And what came of that? Architecture. Chicago is big on architecture. Architecture, the service of designing structures using steel. giant skyscrapers. Tertiary sector. So you've got all sectors represented. You've got the mining, primary, converting to steel, secondary, and you've got the tertiary. My boss, Judge Mark Stoner, his son got a degree in architecture. Where does he work now? Chicago. That's where all the big, that's, you know, a lot of stuff going on in Chicago, especially architecture-wise. Still building big steel buildings. Dixie portion of Illinois. Upland South, interior low plateau. You've got the Ohio River to the south. You've got the Mississippi River to the west. Mississippi River carved out, you know, when the glacier came down, melted, carved out a big path. Opposite of the northern foundry section of Illinois. Complete opposite. Like Colorado, with the western part being completely different than the eastern part. Rockies. Very similar with Illinois. Northern part, big skyscrapers, businesses, industry, big banking center. Southern part's more, I'd call it hillbilly. It's similar to residents moving in to the southern part from Kentucky, West Virginia, Virginia. Moving on to the breadbasket portion of Illinois. Fertile soil, so corn, soybeans. Oh, I did want to show this Chicago, south side of Chicago steel mill, foundry. That's where Leroy Brown is from. And I've got a lowland south, upland south for the modules map. Illinois is somewhere in there. Breadbasket, soybeans. Look at all those greens. Soybean production, Illinois. Good soil. Growing a lot of soybeans to the west of us in Illinois. Corn. A lot of green for corn. They're growing some corn in Illinois. Good soil. Illinois, yeah, they got the cold winters like we do, hot, humid summers. You're getting that warm, moist Gulf air. It's nice and flat. Great for agriculture. Illinois. And finally, Ontario. O Canada. Empty quarter. The farther you get away from the U.S. border, the less populated. I know that. I sometimes go to Ontario to fish with my neighbor, and we go about 100 miles north of Sault Ste. Marie, and there's not a lot up there. There's one other guy on the lake that we go to. And these, so empty quarter, you got the tundra, bad soil, not very big populations of people, cold winters. You've got the cool continental subarctic climate. You do have the big Hudson Bay up there to the north, so you will have pockets of population, but not a lot of agriculture going on up there in northern Ontario. Breadbasket of Ontario. Canadian Shield. Soil's not great, but, and it's, you know, not great like the Mississippi drainage basin, like you have with Illinois, states in the Great Plains. But they do grow stuff. Sugar beets, oats, canola. Holy cannoli. It's a nice picture of a canola field. And this is Tobermory, Ontario, off of Lake Huron. This picture is from reddit.com. Canola field. In Ontario, you get those kettle lakes, which is what I would fish in. It's a bunch of little lakes. You gotta walk, portage they call it. My friend Ricky, my Canadian friend up there, calls it that. You gotta portage from each lake. You know, don't get stuck in the bush, as they say. You can get lost up there in the bush. I have. It's not that much fun. Moving on to the foundry section of Ontario. Steel mills. That's a beauty. That's in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. This is from alamy.com. That's a good sized steel mill. What does Ontario have? A nice black and white ink saver. You know you're getting old when you're worried about your ink usage on your printer. So this is a nice black and white ink saver picture. You got a lot of Great Lakes there. You got Superior, Huron, Ontario, Erie, a lot of access. Ship pretty much anything from Ontario to the States. Variety of different cities. That's why you got these big mills like this. I think the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald was somewhere in Superior. Foundries. You got the Great Lakes to move all this stuff, all the steel. I'm going to throw in Quebec. You know, Quebec is right on the border, but it's just a line, as discussed in the chapters. You know, there's some Frenchy stuff going on in Ontario, and probably a little Ontario stuff going on in French Quebec. And I think that completes this segment. Thank you. It's been a fun class. Enjoyed it very much. Thank you, Professor Baker. Thank you, production team, Sonora Lynn O'Connor. Thank you.